All right, everybody, welcome back to Leviticus chapter 8 today. There is a lot going on in this chapter. The outline is quite extensive, so I'll try to be as quick as I can. Leviticus chapter 8, these events took place same time as all the other chapters, roughly, about 1490 BC. It's when God gave all of these instructions to the Israelites. They were in the wilderness on their way to the Canaan land. In our definition section, we have two terms. The first one, the Urim and the Thummim. The Urim and the Thummim are only mentioned a couple times in the Bible, and we're told that they were carried inside of the breastpiece that the high priest wore. Now, the exact nature of these objects isn't known. The Bible mentions them a few times, but it just doesn't give us a whole lot of details about what they were and how they worked. It appears that they were used by the priests to determine the will of God, according to verses like Numbers 27, verse 21. Our second term, or rather clarification here, Aaron's sons. So I just wanted to list them so that you know about them going forward. Aaron had 4 sons who served under him as priests. Their names were Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, according to Exodus chapter 28, verse 1. Our outline for this chapter is quite extensive. It barely fit on the page. So let's go through this. Verses 1 through 13 are our first section. We're going to talk about the anointing of Aaron and the dedication of his sons as priests. God told Moses to gather all of the people of Israel at the tabernacle and to bring Aaron, his sons, the priestly garments, the anointing oil, a bowl for a sin offering, 2 rams, and a basket of unleavened bread. And when all the people had gathered, Moses began the process of consecrating the priests for their special service to God. Aaron and his sons were washed with water, and then they were clothed in the special priestly garments that had been crafted for them at God's instructions back in Exodus chapter 28. You can read all the details about those garments. Aaron, who was the high priest, he was clothed with the ephod, a tunic, the holy crown, which was a gold plate that was attached to his what is that thing called? Turban, and the breastpiece, into which went the Urim and the Thummim, which we just talked about. Moses took the holy anointing oil that had been created special for this anointing, and he anointed everything in the tabernacle, and he also anointed Aaron by pouring some of the oil on his head. Then in verses 14 through 17, we talk about the sacrifice of the bull. So the next part of the ceremony of consecrating these priests involved the bull that had been brought for a sin offering. Aaron and his sons were supposed to place their hands on the head of the bull before it was killed. Moses then took the blood, put some of it on the horns of the bronze altar, and poured the rest out at the base of the bronze altar. The fat on the entrails, the 2 kidneys, the long lobe of the liver were separated and burned on the altar. And then what was left of the bull after that was taken outside of the camp and burned. The next part of this very intricate ceremony was the sacrifice of the rams. This is verses 18 through 36. So there were 2 rams that were brought for this. You remember, one of the rams was brought for a burnt offering. Aaron and his sons were to put their hands on the ram's head before it was killed. Moses then took the blood and threw it against the side of the altar. The ram was cut into pieces and burned on the altar. The second ram, known as the ram of ordination, was brought and killed just like the first one. Moses took its blood and put some on the right lobe of Aaron's ear, his right thumb, and his big toe on his right foot. And then blood was also placed in the same location on all of Aaron's sons. The ram's fat, the kidneys, the long lobe of the liver, and its right thigh were placed in Aaron's hands, along with 1 unleavened loaf, 1 loaf of bread with oil, and 1 wafer, and they were waved before the Lord as a wave offering. The wave offering was then repeated by each of Aaron's sons. After this, Moses took the articles that were used for this wave offering and burnt them on the altar as an ordination offering. When this was complete, Moses took the ram's breast and he waved it to the Lord as a wave offering. Aaron and his sons were then supposed to boil what remained of the meat of the ram and to eat it with unleavened bread at the entrance of the tabernacle. And then afterwards, the priests were to remain in the tabernacle for 7 days until the days of ordination were complete. That's quite a process. There'll be a pop quiz on all of that when we do chapter 9 tomorrow. Now, as we talk about our application, it's clear that being a priest was a very serious job, right? Otherwise, all these details wouldn't be that important, but evidently they were. That's why God put them in here. Priests who didn't take their job seriously were sometimes killed by God. We'll actually read about that in a couple chapters here. In the New Testament, disciples of Jesus are called to a special role as priests. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 says this, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness and into his marvelous light." So we are priests if we are followers of Jesus. That's a role that he's given to us. Are we taking that role seriously? Do our lives reflect our special calling? Are we striving for holiness in our manner of life? Can we truly say that our lives are dedicated to the service of God like they were for these priests back in the Old Testament? Becoming a Christian is a continual commitment to sacrifice your will and your life to God. That repeated daily offering is part of the way that we worship today. We don't offer lambs and oxen as worship. Our worship is the presentation of our bodies, of our lives on a daily basis as a living sacrifice to God, Romans chapter 12, verse 1. So is that your daily goal, and are you taking that seriously? That's your application from Leviticus chapter 8.